Next stop, Chicago Junction.
Yes, it's time for this month's broadcast of Chicago Junction, the program that takes you through the wonderful world of trains, with help from our panel of experts. I am your announcer, Brian Valou, and here's our boss, the head of the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Chief Engineer, Electrical Engineer, Mr. John DeVita.
Well, thank you very much, Brian. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Chicago Junction from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, March the 8th, the year 2023. Today, the panel will be talking about railroads and model railroads. And now to start today's broadcast, here's our announcer, Mr. Brian.
Oh, thank you, John. I am your announcer, and I'm also one of the panel. And I'm a farmer. And play with model trains, indoor and outdoor. And like to rebuild steam locomotives. And I also do Operation Lifesaver and explain people it is dangerous around the tracks. And you are Mr. Dave DeRuska.
Dave DeRuska, yes, sir. Retired locomotive engineer with 30 years experience. Also the Chief Mucky Muck of Chicago Railroad History Month. This October will be the 175th anniversary of the first train to operate out of Chicago on the Galena and Chicago Union Railroad. My appearance today is sponsored by the Railroad Retirement Board that generally pays me every month. And you'll be glad to know that no animals were harmed in the making of this program.
So far.
So far. We still have time.
Hi, this is Doug Kenyuk. I'm a rail fan, N-scaler, officer in the Railroad and Short Lines Club of Chicago, and an adjunct professor over at Wilbur Wright College. And again, longtime rail fan, amateur historian.
We're all amateurs at some one way or another.
Okay, you go first.
I go first.
You go first, yeah.
Why do I go first?
Because
we volunteered you.
I don't know. How does seniority go? I'm the youngest on this program. Who's the next youngest? Doug. Oh, you're not ready?
Oh, hell no. Never.
All right, well, I could go with the news, then I'll save my other stuff for after.
Okay, yeah. Well,
Let's
why don't
do
you
that.
go?
Here's the
Let's
news.
just do news.
This is not The Simpsons.
No, I was going for the hippy-dippy weatherman.
Oh, okay. Siemens is to build another rail manufacturing plant in North Carolina. They announced they're going to invest $220 million. The plant's going to produce passenger coach cars and meet the rising demand for passenger service in North America. Obviously, they know something we don't. The company will also build on a 200-acre site the first of its kind to overhaul locomotive and passenger cars. For more than 30 years, they've seen the U.S. market grow as they have manufactured over 3,000 locomotives, passenger coaches, and light rail vehicles in partnership with American suppliers. According to this, it's anticipated the plant will begin operations in 2024 and have the latest in technology such as robot welding, 3D printing, and virtual reality welder training. Currently, Siemens has plants in Sacramento, and they claim to also have, let's see, where is it in the article here? They have 8 manufacturing plants in the U.S. when this one is done. So, interesting. Siemens thinks there's going to be lots of money around here for trains.
Well, that plant, and I admit the plant in California does work pretty good. Well, that's where all the streetcars came from.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but
They
California
needed someplace to be
Yeah.
built.
Well, that's because they got that Buy American clause in all the federal contracts, so that's why they got to build it. Okay, someplace called Duals Technology has interesting enough, a rail car inspection portal platform that can inspect rail cars from more than 90 views depending on configuration. Now can be customized for Pacific rail operators. Designated to enable rail companies to mitigate preventable mechanical factor derailments. Found it was interesting that the story came out just after the derailment. So,
Strike while the iron's hot.
yeah, I guess. And it says 13 North American rail operators now use the platform. It says the can visually detect potential mechanical issues leading to overheating of wheel and brake components. That's what caught my eye. Metra has awarded a place called Clearblade a $3.9 million contract to provide grade crossing and equipment monitoring technology at hundreds of locations across their network. The company will provide real-time crossing notification and warning solutions for quick response to anomalies and events. Clearblade's Edge software will monitor all wayside assets, including crossings, positive train control, wayside systems, snow melting system, track circuits, switch machines, and power systems. Now, you guys are ex-Metra. You think that's going to work? Yeah, that's what I thought.
They're spending money on it. It must going to work.
And now we know we had a little slight accident with the high-speed train in Greece. So Brightline reached 130 miles per hour. Brightline was doing a test, and they achieved on its new 35-mile rail corridor between Orlando and Coca-Cola, Florida, 135 miles per hour. The new tracks are built along the Beach Line Expressway, which is fenced in and has no grade crossings. What a surprise. You got no grade crossings, you can go faster. Reaching 130 just isn't one of their milestones. By hitting 130, Brightline beats its previous record of 110, which the agency accomplished last fall while testing a train through Martin and St. Lucie counties. The Orlando station, which opens this year, is expected to change train travel in the U.S., the release said. Brightline will transport passengers between South and Central Florida in around 3 hours, connecting two of the most congested city pairs in the country. Current speeds include 79 miles per hour in South Florida, 110 along the Orlando extension from West Palm Beach to Cocoa, and 125 from Cocoa to Orlando International Airport, according to the press release. Brightline train sets are powered by two locomotives, one at each end, that are 16-cylinder, 4,000 horsepower Cummins EPA Tier 4 compliant Cummins diesel-electric locomotives. Siemens Rolling Stock Facility in Sacramento manufactures the locomotives and coaches.
My question is, how many pedestrians per hour do they get?
That's a good question. Well, they're still in test. If you watch Virtual Railfan, they catch the train sets being brought in from California as a special run. You can see them come by the cameras.
They've been noted to take a few trespassers off the planet. Quite a few, actually.
Hey, it's fenced in, no problem.
Yeah, that's just it. Fenced in, and someone comes by with a wire cutter.
Well, we had that problem on the Metro Electric, They cut through the fences.
Yeah.
Shortcut.
Between that and when they had that little splurge of missing wire.
I don't know if you caught the video that I posted on our Facebook page, but the guy in a lowboy trailer taking a tractor across the tracks, and he gets hung up on the crossing. And, of course, the inevitable happens, and the train hits his lowboy, but he goes running back. I don't know what he's doing after he gets stalled. He gets out of the truck. He goes running back. He's looking, and then he takes off in the opposite direction. But before he gets in the clear, he closes the door on his cab.
I caught that remark there. Fortunately, when I pushed to see it, somebody all of a sudden it was like somebody playing with a dog, and then everything goes blank. I'm going, what?
Yeah, sometimes the people string these videos together. I know it stopped it abruptly. Oh, it stopped and then it started again in slow motion, and then after the slow motion, I tuned out. I wasn't going to hang around and see what else comes up. But if you say it's dogs,
Well, it was a dog, and I'm going on. Oh, this is nice. The arms are rubbing the belly, okay. And then all of a sudden, bloop. And I'm looking and I see the truck, and because we do get to see the trailer on the crossing.
right?
I'm sitting here going, I've seen that before.
I'll have to check that out, see what's going on.
But that was funny. I
was perusing through some of my posts to see what I could bring today. I wanted to bring something about Metra extending out to Rockford, but fortunately the newspaper site that it was posted on had taken it down already. No longer available.
Well, yeah, they're kind of figuring out what's going to happen now that Chrysler closed the Belvedere plant.
Lord, yeah.
Moved it out.
Oh, let's see. The Genesee Valley Transportation acquires a historic Alco PA. The Genesee Valley Transportation has purchased one of the only surviving American Locomotive Company PA's Nickel Plate Road 190, which has been restored to near operating condition in Portland, Oregon by preservationist Doyle McCormick. The deal was completed this week, and the locomotive will soon be relocated across the country to Scranton, PA, one of your favorite places, where GVT's Delaware-Lackawanna Railroad maintains a fleet of Alco and Montreal Locomotive Works locomotives. In some ways, the move to Pennsylvania is a homecoming for 190, which was built for Santa Fe, but became famous as, and the sentence dropped here. What did it become famous as? D&H?
Yeah, D&H number 19.
Yeah, okay. On Thursday morning, GVT officials likened the acquisition of the PA 190 to buying the plane of famous aviator Charles Lindbergh. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to obtain the spirit of St. Louis of locomotives, said Michael Thomas, president of GVT Rail, on behalf of our ownership group and the entire team at GVT Rail. We are ecstatic that Doyle has entrusted us with the stewardship of his great gift to rail preservation. The shop crews will evaluate the locomotive when it arrives in Scranton in coming weeks and figure out what exactly needs to be done to make it operational. Once 190 is put into service, it will lead excursions in northeastern Pennsylvania, including on former D&H trackage operated by DL. The article goes on to talk about the history of the locomotive. It was with Santa Fe, then it went to the DH, and then it went to Boston for commuter service, and then was shipped to Mexico in 1978. The PAs were used in Mexico for a few years, but were eventually retired. 2 of the PAs remain south of the border in museums. In 2000, McCormick, perhaps best known as the caretaker of Southern Pacific 484 Daylight 449, teamed up with Smithsonian Curator of Technology at Technology Bill Withune to bring 2 of the PAs home to the United States, or at least what was left of them. That year, the skeletons of D&H 16 and 18 headed north to Oregon. The remains of 16 eventually went to the Museum of American Railroad in Texas, which is currently working on a cosmetic restoration of the locomotive into its original Santa Fe appearance. Amtrak hopes to work with the Illinois Department of Transportation to resolve the impasse over bringing passenger rail service between Chicago and Moline. Amtrak spokesman Mark Maglieri said late Monday that the National Rail Service has offered its assistance to IDOT, but it's up to the state agency whether to work with the Federal Surface Transportation Board to resolve the dispute with Iowa Interstate Railroad, he said. The board typically works to resolve disagreements between railroad companies. Last summer, the STB has ordered mediation in an ongoing dispute between Amtrak on one side, on the other side, Freight Railroad CSX and Norfolk Southern with the Alabama State Port Authority over the possible return of passenger service between New Orleans and Mobile. So I think that was eventually resolved, and there are supposed to be trains operating on that line. Maglieri said Monday the QC dispute is not between railroads but local and state officials in the Iowa interstate. IDOT has pursued several avenues to advance restoration of passenger rail service between Chicago and the Quad Cities. These steps have included consulting with Amtrak to explore ways that the agency might assist in this project. Recently, there was a meeting held with IDOT, the FRA, Amtrak, and the Iowa Interstate to discuss ways that the four parties could work together to bring service to reality and start delivering the benefits to the public. Unfortunately, the Iowa Interstate Railroad still wishes to pursue the scope of improvements that could be cost prohibitive to taxpayers. Surprise there. Despite the challenges, IDOT remains committed to this project and seeing passenger rail return to Moline and the Quad Cities. The state has found $447 million sitting in a shoebox for the entire project between Chicago and Moline, which is a mix of federal state resources, including $225 million from the Rebuild Illinois Capital Program, with the Iowa Interstate seeking a public investment of roughly $750 million for the 55-mile section between Wyanett and Moline. Earlier Monday, Moline Mayor Sagitha Rayapati, Illinois State Senator Mike Halpin, and State Representative Greg Johnson said they're asking Amtrak and the STB to order Iowa Interstate to provide rail passenger facilities for reasonable compensation. So it goes on and on and on. So here we go again, another attempt to bring rail service to previously served areas that are running up against a railroad who wants to hold everybody hostage until they get the money to fix up their tracks. Oh, here's shuffling deck chairs on the Titanic department. A hedge fund arguing that the Union Pacific ranks dead last in every important operating metric has asked the railroad's board of directors to replace current CEO Lance Fritz with former Chief Operating Officer Jim Vena. Soroban Capital, which has a $1.6 billion stake in UP and ranks among the top 10 investors, made the demands for the change on Sunday in a letter to the board. In response, UP said on Sunday that it will hire a new CEO to take over sometime next year as part of the succession process that began in November. I'm confident that now is the right time for the UP's next leader to take the helm. I'm looking forward to working with the board as we identify our next CEO to lead the company into a future. Soroban was highly critical of Fritz's tenure, which began in 2015. Union Pacific has repeatedly and significantly failed to reach its potential under Mr. Fritz's leadership.
Well, wait a minute now. The board of directors should get one of those expediters to help.
Yeah, maybe a couple. I was reading after this big derailment in Ohio how the Norfolk Southern has been lowering their operating costs basically by making longer trains and doing less inspections. So maybe this capital company can encourage the UP to do the same thing. Short up on the crews, make longer trains, and blow things up on the process. Yeah. It goes on and on. New Amtrak service tentatively called the Great River Route could become available to passengers as early as late 2023. The Twin Cities Milwaukee-Chicago, or TCMC, train will run on the same track as the Empire Builder, which travels between Chicago and the Pacific Northwest with stops throughout Wisconsin. The plan was 2024, but we're all trying to get it done faster, said Lisa Stern, Chief of Railroads and Harbors at the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. Stern said that will offer additional transportation opportunities for people who can't or don't want to drive. Stops include La Crosse, Tomah, the Wisconsin Dells, Portage, and Columbus. The TCMC is considered an extension of the Hiawatha train, which runs 7 daily round trips. So, of course, they're getting money for this from the government.
See, by making it an extension of the current Hiawatha, they don't have to get into all the fights justifying it.
Yeah, right. Article about how the Chicago automated train system broke down again.
Yeah, it was on WGN.
Yeah, this is where this is from. Three days before Christmas, on the busiest holiday travel day for Chicago's airports, O'Hare's automatic train system broke. The outage spanned 3 days and stranded thousands of travelers, some of whom missed connecting flights. It wasn't the first or the last time the airport train system failed to function, and it probably won't be the last. It's just, the automated train system connects O'Hare terminals and remote parking lot, as well as a new rental car facility. WGN Investigates reviewed records that revealed the train system had to be taken offline for at least 30 minutes or more 53 times in the last 10 months since it fully reopened. Some of the outages were planned maintenance or software upgrades, but the train system unexpectedly failed to function on 17 days due to weather or various system failures, airport officials acknowledged. And of course, anytime you're dealing with new technology, you're going to have problems, travel expert Peter Greenberg said.
It's been around for 10 years or more.
Yeah.
It's not exactly new.
Mayor Rahm Emanuel's administration originally promised the system would be upgraded by the end of 2018 without a significant disruption to service. When that deadline came and went, contractors told the Chicago Department of Aviation it would be necessary to stop all train service to get the upgrades complete. As WGN has previously reported, air travelers were put on buses during the shutdown at a cost of more than $80 million. The system didn't fully reopen to travelers until April of 2022. They struggle in bad weather. I could read the rest of this, but it's sad.
You could still see the old cars right off Irving Park when you go past the airport. They got them stored over there. Yeah. Like, maybe we got to put these back.
And a final note from me here. Abandoned train station in Gary could be revived. Gary, Indiana, a long-abandoned train station in northwest Indiana, could be on the verge of seeing new life. The shell of the train station is visible to drivers on I-90 through downtown Gary. The station once served passenger trains on the old New York Central and Baltimore and Ohio railroads, but was abandoned since the 1970s. An effort to turn the abandoned hulk into a mixed-use restaurant and cultural center, oh boy, just got a big boost. Now that'll be a real sell there in Gary, won't it?
No, after you get past the smell of the place, yeah.
Mixed-use restaurant cultural center, just what the people of Gary need. The preservation group Decay Devils, ooh, there's a great name, secured nearly $150,000 in grants. Between grants and the group's own fundraising, they are now halfway to the goal of paying an architect to assess what needs to be done to save the building. Boy, they're right on the cusp of getting that done. And the next step would be just to do our other studies, which can take up to maybe 6 months, and then redoing the building.
Let's see, 150 grand. Let's see. I want to say we need a little paint, some shrubbery, a couple of curtains. Yeah. We'll be all set.
They've actually
we'll get Ty Pennington in.
Yeah. They've gone in and cleaned it up. I know that. Gary Union Station is on the National Register for Historic Places, completed in 1910. It was built out of cast-in-place reinforced concrete. Can't blow that sucker up.
They're doing that to Michigan Central now, too.
Yeah, right. Ford took it over.
Yeah.
So I guess these, what do I call them, Decay Devils? There's also a EJ&E steam locomotive in the park nearby that station, and they've gotten grants to cosmetically fix it up. Another plus for the residents of Gary. You can go look at the train.
Yeah.
That's it for me.
Oh, me?
Well, now you're ready.
Oh, yeah, a little bit. Like Class 1s agree to join FRA's close call system. CSX highlights record of safety performance. That's so much fun for them.
What do they consider a close call?
Confidential close call reporting system, C3RS. Why couldn't they work in 3CPO?
Beep boop, beep boop, beep.
Well, they listen to the recordings from the cabin, and the guy goes, "Ooh, that was close," so they're recording them now.
I mean, that's something that should be working with Operation Lifesaver too on that, I think. But according, all seven Class 1s have agreed to the Federal Railroad Administration's voluntary close call reporting system, according to the Association of American Railroads. The railroad said they enrolled the system after the U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg.
Buttigieg.
Oh, Buttigieg?
Buttigieg.
Well, he's got a booty, big booty.
Okay.
We can call him Big Booty.
We're not going there.
Oh, yeah. I watched too much of Buckaroo Banzai.
Oh, yeah. John Big Booty.
Yes. Booty. The railroad said they enrolled in the system after the U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg,
Big Booty,
said last week called on them to do so in the aftermath of February 3rd Norfolk Southern train derailment. The industry absolutely shares your commitment to establishing effective mechanisms to help prevent future accidents like the derailment in East Palestine. AAR President and CEO Ian Jeffrey said in a March 2 letter to Big Booty. All Class 1s have programs in place to allow employees to provide confidential information on safety concerns. These programs range from establishing using anonymous reporting hotlines to processes that incorporate peer review teams and root cause analysis, much like C3RS, Jeffrey wrote. The railroads continue their own internal programs while participating in FRA's C3RS, he said. Meanwhile, CSX yesterday highlighted that it achieves record safety performance in recent years through investments in infrastructure, technology, fluid network, operations, and safe culture that emphasizes employee training and coaching. And yesterday they had a mudslide closing off the gorge, New River Gorge. Yeah, big avalanche. Train can't get through.
Just getting the mud plow out.
Well, it's being safe. It's not moving.
Yes. Yeah, the Cardinal was stopped in Huntington, and all of a sudden they had trouble finding buses to take it to Washington.
Couldn't they find some school buses?
Oh, school bus ride.
No. They need a court order for those.
CSX understands that safety is the foundation of our business, which depends upon our ability to work collaboratively as a one CSX team to deliver customers' freight, safety, reliability, and sustainability, said President CEO Joe Heinrich. Everything we do in our company is centered around our recognition that the safety of our employees and communities where we operate is paramount. A list of CSX efforts to improve safety can be found here. Also, subscribe to Rail Prime to read this interview with the CSX Vice President and Safety Rail Officer Jim Schwischentenberg on how the company should be enhanced for all railway workers.
I think to start with, we need to have easier to pronounce names of railroad officials.
Well, trust me. Look at the bottom of the page, first letter.
Oh yeah.
You thought I was joking.
Well, it's easy. It's switch, N, burger. So it's switching a burger.
Oh, like In-N-Out Burgers.
Yeah, there you go.
Good luck.
No, that's in California.
Good luck. I don't even call attendance anymore because I got names I can't even figure out how to pronounce in my classes.
NTSB FRA intensify safety reviews of Norfolk Southern operation. Boy, they were really pinpointing it on this one.
Sure, picking on the NS.
Yeah, why would they be
I don't
doing
know.
that? You know, when they broke out that video showing the fireworks underneath the car,
Yeah, right.
and they had March 4th, Springfield, Ohio, right outside of Cleveland, and the death of the conductor.
Well,
That's a trifecta. No problem.
He was killed in the incident between a dump truck and the train. Other incidents include, on December 8th, an accident in which an employee for National Salvage and Service Corp, assigned to work with the NS team replacing track, was killed when the operator of a spiking machine reversed direction and struck the employee in Reed, Pennsylvania. December 13th, 2022, accident in which an NS trainee conductor was killed and another conductor was injured when the lead locomotive of the NS train struck a steel angle bar protruding from a gondola on another NS train stopped on an adjacent track in Bessemer, Alabama.
Well, I used to be one of my big fears, like when you're working on the electric district and you're passing some freight on the adjacent track. I'm sitting like this on the getting ready to go out the door if anything comes through the windshield.
See if anything's hanging off.
Yeah.
As part of the safety investing, NTSB also reviewed October 28th derailment in Sandusky, Ohio. Well, Ohio's really
Yeah, they're taking it on the chin.
Yes, they are. As part of this, the NTSB concerned that several organizational factors may be involved in these accidents, including safety culture, says board officials in an official press release. Meanwhile, the FRA announced yesterday will conduct a 60-day supplemental safety assessment of NS operations. After a series of derailments and the death of one of its workers, we are initiating this further supplemental safety review on Norfolk Southern, while also calling on Norfolk Southern to act urgently to improve its focus on safety so the company can begin earning back the trust of the public and its employees, said the U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg.
Buttigieg.
Footages.
In a press release.
Butter.
The FRA safety team will review the findings of 2022 NS system audit and revisit the FRA's recommendations in the scope of the railroad's responses. In a prepared statement issued after the NS conductor was killed in Cleveland, NS President and CEO Alan Shaw said he called together the NS management team to emphasize urgency in finding new solutions to the railroad safety issues. Starting today, NS will hold a safety stand-down briefings reaching every employee across the NS network. Moving forward, we're going to rebuild our safety culture from the ground up, and we're going to invest in more than safety. This is not who we are. That is not acceptable, and will not continue.
Was that invest or infest?
Let me translate that for you. It's the employee's fault.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
I didn't bring the article in, but I posted something on the Facebook page about the UP losing a lawsuit. A woman was in a bar, was overserved, got drunk, sat down on the tracks and was hit by a train. Well, she sued both the UP and the bar for overserving her. They both lost. The UP lost because if the engineer had the headlight on bright, he would have been able to see the woman and stop the train in time. Now, I don't know if this was a nighttime. Must have been a nighttime accident, unless she's a day drinker. Who knows?
And then why? The light was probably on bright.
Well, maybe they got the hold of the download and the headlight was on dim. Who knows? I mean, one would think that personal responsibility. You don't get drunk, and you don't sit on the train tracks after you get drunk.
Right, and it's what I'm saying. Why didn't this woman get in trouble?
Well, she's permanently damaged, I guess. She's got a lot of problems. They didn't kill her, unfortunately. Sorry to say that. That's a nasty thing to say, but they would have probably got off cheaper killing her than if now they got to pay all this money for her upkeep for who knows how long.
No, they got enough lawyers. They'll drag this out for 7 or 8
probably,
years.
and they'll appeal it and get it beat down to a more reasonable amount.
Well, it's like the case that I read last month about the light rail engineer having the decision reversed. The police decided he was driving recklessly, and I'm sitting there going,
"Huh?"
The kid drove through gates coming down. Lights were flashing. Why did he drive across the tracks?
He was in a hurry.
Yeah, but they blamed him because he was a stellar performer.
Right? Yeah. Was he basketball, football?
Yeah, something like that.
Many sports. He was a multi-sport.
He was
genius.
also an altar boy, and he served the sick on Sunday, and he took care of
And his mama
raised
loved him.
puppies. And
When they come up with that, I'd like to be in the courtroom when that case goes down.
You would never be in the courtroom. They wouldn't let you in they wouldn't let you on the jury. That's for damn sure.
Why?
Because they'd say railroad engineer. No.
Oh, I'm a retiree. I don't know nothing.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know nothing.
Yeah, we know, Mr. Valou, we know you're on a railroad radio show, and we know what your opinions are.
I don't have to worry about that. I called up and said, "Hey, I'm over 70." Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
don't have to be
I
called
don't
anymore.
worry about that either. The first time that they hadn't called me in like about 7 years, and they called on my birthday when I turned 71.
They sent me the last one. I forgot to go down. I just didn't bother to go down, and I called them the next day, and I said, "Oh, by the way, it says on here if you're over 70, you can get out of this." Okay.
Let me out.
And that was it.
I ward off and let's see, Waldorf and who's that other one? His partner in the balcony.
Oh, those two guys from the Muppets? Yeah.
I can see it with you two guys.
You done or you got some more?
Well, okay. Well, we got preservation news.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, we can start off with good news.
Go ahead.
Ooh,
Oh, yeah.
nobody dead, huh?
Yeah.
Not yet.
No, not yet. Locomotive number 16 from the East Broadtop Railroad. Fully certified. They actually completed a successful 2-day on the 18th and 19th of February. Winter Spectacular, the first one with a steam locomotive in buku years. And they had a nice picture of it all steamed up, and I'm waiting to see the photographs from it when it happens. They had the steamer out running on the tracks. They ran up to the museum, Rock Hill Furnace Trolley Museum. They actually had the Liberty Liner cleaned up.
Ooh.
But one of their main attraction was running the San Diego streetcar. And I do have a picture of it when I first got to California in 1981, just before they opened up the streetcar system outside the base, to take us down to Tijuana.
You got some wacky weed?
Huh?
Got some senoritas.
Uh-huh. But yeah, they set up 2 passenger trains, and got 5 miles of track all set, and they got the track rebuilt in the picnic grove, and they'll be all set for operations and tours next year. They've been making great progress in the last 3.5 years. Okay. If you head down south to Silva, the restoration is underway for 3985. The Challenger. At the Railroading Heritage of the Midwest America, crews have taken the first steps towards returning the UP Challenger 3985 to operation last week by stripping all the parts off the 4664.
They did it to music?
I hope so. Da-da-dun-dun.
Take it off. Take it all off.
Oh, there's a follow-up joke from George Carlin on that. You know what he says.
Workers also lifted the cab off of it, or the bra. Now topless. Steve Sandberg, President and Chief Operating Officer of RRHMA, said, the RRHMA crews have been making good progress all week. Locomotive last operated in 2010 was stored in Cheyenne, Wyoming until last year as Union Pacific shifted its steam program and focus to the big boy. Also with the Challenger 210-2, number 5511 was also donated, and our HMA plans to restore both steam locomotives to operating condition inside the former Rock Island Silva shops. Of course, our HMA is seeking donations through double matching grant program. To help with the donation, go to RRHMA. Michigan Steam. Genesee County Parks and Recreation are preparing to complete assessment of steam locomotive number 464 for a rebuild to provide rides for years to come. The locomotive last ran in 2018 at the Huckleberry Railroad. Huckleberry. And I keep looking for the Hound. Huckleberry Hound.
That's right.
Come on, you guys aren't older than me. Not that younger than me. Shit.
Well, Dawes Butler was the voice talent for Huckleberry Hound.
You bet. Also did well with the whole J. Ward family. And let's see. But yeah, they figure they got what they're doing to get a work crew. They're going to commission in search of skilled retirees interested in working a couple days a week on rebuilding projects. Team members will be involved in disassembly inspection of a 120-year-old locomotive, which will be used to pull passenger cars on the Huckleberry Railroad. Steam locomotive reached the maximum days of service in 2018. Cost of rebuilding will be determined after the inspection. Not that let it sit for several years.
Yeah. Just a few.
In the corner, probably under some boxes. The project includes disassembling the engine boiler as well as conducting ultrasonic thickness inspection of the boiler itself so it can meet thickness requirement. Locomotive 464 was built in 1903 by the Baldwin Locomotive Works for the Denver Rio Grande. Those interested in working on that project, qualifications include past machine shop experience, heavy mechanical experience. Retirees are a great resource. We will try to tap that resource as much as we can. For info how to apply, go to GeneseeParks.org. And that's all the good stuff for now.
They don't want much, do they?
Hey, I'll just go there and say, I'm day labor. Use me. Then they'll find out that once I'm in the boiler, yeah, I know how to roll flues.
The taggers will show up to paint it.
Yep.
Got some more?
That's it.
That's it. Okay. I mentioned this earlier when you and me were talking. There's a show on the History Channel called Curse of the Civil War Gold. It's done in the same vein as Curse of Oak Island.
Oh, God.
Okay? Now, it's season 1, episode 2, which apparently was on last year, so I missed it completely. This is the railroad episode. And I started listening to it, and I was doing something, so I had it on the TV. I had to go call it back up on the computer and actually listen to it, the whole thing, because I couldn't believe they have a historian on the crew. You know how they got the table and they got the guys and they sit there. One of them's a historian, and he teaches history. And, well, here's all my notes. I'll just go through it. Jefferson Davis was arrested on 3/10/1865. Okay, he was captured by the Union troops down in Georgia, in Irwinville. So I looked up Irwinville. It had railroad service for a short period of time, but not during the Civil War. So first problem. And got the whole history of the railroad service there. Well, the contention of the show is that the Union officers, Pickard and a couple other guys, stole the gold and transported it to Michigan. Now, here's where it gets funny. They said, well, first they're going to do it on the planned railroad that ran from Irwinville to Muskegon, Michigan. That was their first contention.
The planned railroad?
Yes, the planned railroad. So then they go on and they talk about the railroad. They backtrack. They start in Muskegon, work their way back to Georgia in the south, okay? And we have to listen carefully, but they said that they loaded the gold into a boxcar and shipped it north. And I'm like thinking, that ain't going to happen. The whole south was built to 5-foot gauge. The north was 4 foot 8.5. So you got a problem right there alone. 2, railroads never interchanged freight cars during that period of time. That came later. That's how the Teamsters got started. Because they would train would come into the station and they would take the freight off from the freight station and take it to the other railroad's freight station to keep it going. They didn't interchange cars. In the 1870s, the railroad started that stuff with the Star Line, Red Line, White Line, and whatever it is. Those cars were interchanged, and finally the ICC said, no, you guys got to interchange cars. The Jenny Coupler helped with that. But to that point, during the Civil War, cars weren't interchanged.
No.
So then the guys go on to say, well, they stole a locomotive from the Florida Railroad to haul the stuff north.
Oh, this gets better.
Oh, it gets even better than that. So I look up the Florida Railroad. I brought the book with you. I showed you the book.
Yeah.
There's 2 railroads called Florida, Railroad and Railway. The railroad one wasn't built until the 1900s, so that one's out. So it's the Railway. The Railway was built to 5-foot gauge. Eventually was narrowed back down in part of the seaboard. But at that time was 5-foot gauge. So guess what? If they stole the locomotive, they weren't going to get very far. Not out of Florida. So they say, okay, so now it gets to, somehow the gold gets to Muskegon. Okay, Muskegon, right? And they actually go to Ferrysburg, which is south of Muskegon. It's about 10 miles south, 12 miles south, something like that. Because I think Muskegon was already doing a car ferry across the lake at that point. Mm-hmm. So that's what they were aiming for. So the guy said, wow, they built a secret railroad from Ferrisburg all the way up to Muskegon in 1868.
Secret railroad.
Yeah, along the shore so they could haul their gold car to Muskegon to put it on the barge across the lake. So now they, typical, in that vein of Oak Island, they're up in an airplane, they're running along the shoreline. Yeah, I could see now it's 150 years ago. Yeah, I could see the right of way. It was right there. So then they bring a guy in with the ground radar to find the track. And I'm like thinking, now wait a minute. It's 150 years ago. It's next to a lake. It's water. There's sand, wind, rain, weather. There could be any track there. Number two, up until about 1900, abandoned track was usually recovered right away because it was more valuable than the people who put it down. So anyway, they go out and they find some blips, and then the guy goes, well, there's an Elks Club there, and it's on their beachfront property. Guy goes, I remember when I was a kid, we used to play with a steam locomotive that was crashed in the lake over here. I said, it gets better. So the guy goes, really? Yeah. And so he goes, yeah, it was over there. I remember playing it on a kid. And I'm like thinking, okay, you were born after World War II. During World War II, I think I remember something about a scrap drive where they grab all the metal they could find. And if there's a steam locomotive sitting on the beach, I would have thought it would have been stripped and sent to the war effort. This is the locomotive that in 1868 hauled the gold to Muskegon. Anyway.
The one from Florida.
Yeah, the one from Florida.
Was stolen.
So they go out, and the guy goes with the radar, and he says, oh, about here. I detect metal. Now, they're about 3 feet from where the water's lapping up on the beach. They start digging down. Now, you go to the beach, you start digging down, what do you hit? Water. And then the sand starts collapsing because you're not going to go. And they're digging, and finally the guy gets an auger, and he's go down, tap, tap. There, and this guy is adamant that this is the steam locomotive. So he reaches down through the water, and he feels something. He goes, I feel something. The guy goes, it's the locomotive. He jumps up and down. This guy who's driving this look for the gold, he starts jumping up and down on the beach going, oh, it's the locomotive. So they finally decide they're not going to be able to dig anymore because of the water, right? So now they're going to go back and find the tracks that ran along the beach. They're 15 feet away from the shoreline. So they can get a little deeper. They get about 4 feet down. Guess what they hit? Water and sand. So they bring some caissons and they sink it down so they can get in and dig, and they get another foot down. And they're not going to go any further because the pumps cannot keep up with the water coming in. So the guy reaches down, he feels around, he goes, I felt the track. You gotta watch this thing. And so, okay, fine. So then they go back and they decide to abandon that. I mean, they had all these volunteers helping dig it out. I mean, this hole's getting bigger and bigger, and it's getting shallower and shallower because it keeps collapsing. So they're sitting at the table, and the guy hands him a bunch of railroad spikes. He goes, well, I found these at the beach. That proves that there was a railroad here. Well, at that moment, the guy, this was the only time in the whole show he showed any common sense. Yeah, but you can get those anywhere. So then he pulls up a photograph. They were going through the local library photographs, and they showed the rails sometime after World War II, judging by the bathing suits that the people were wearing. It was probably after the war. And I'm like, okay, that's nice, but that doesn't prove anything. Meanwhile, they said that the railroad was built in 1868 and abandoned in 1861, long enough to get the gold from Ferrisburg to Muskegon. Guy comes up and he goes, oh yeah, I got this map from 1878 of Muskegon, and it shows the rail line right here. Now, they just said it that was abandoned in 1871, and the guy, well, I got a map that shows it. And they got this historian on the crew that's talking about this stuff. And
Did he sound like he knew what he was talking about?
No, absolutely not. So then anyway, they find somebody who says, yeah, I remember my grandfather or great-grandfather said that, yeah, they were pushing railroad cars off the barges into the Lake Michigan, on the car ferry. So now, towards the end of the show, they're looking for the boxcar in Lake Michigan. They find one. 1955 solid metal. The guy goes down to the dive and goes, oh, that's not it, it's metal. So then they found about 5 other spots. They're going to be, it's going to take 3 more shows now, because I looked apparently this show was in 2018 on TV. So I looked at the synopsis and they said that they spent some time looking at all these other sites, and I guess they didn't find anything. I'm not going to watch it. I mean, it's like watching Curse of Oak Island.
So they didn't find any Roman coins or.
Well, they keep finding like buttons and a coin here and there.
Yeah.
So you know that one guy from Oak Island that does the metal detecting.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
with these guys now.
Oh, yeah. They got an expert on the case.
Oh yeah. So if you get a chance, it's called Curse of the Civil War Gold / Railroad episode. If you really want to, I mean, it's just. It only took me like 5 minutes. Of course, yeah, I'm a rail fan. All right, it would have took a regular historian about an hour to figure out, one, the gauge was wrong. Even if they managed to steal the locomotive, they wouldn't get very far. Because 1868, a lot of railroads were still wrecked or they were being converted to standard gauge. And according to the thing, the Florida Railroad didn't standardize until 1898. So they were 5 foot for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Railroad running up the shoreline of Lake Michigan and in the state of Michigan was probably a logging railroad.
Mm-hmm.
They were all over the place. They build them temporarily, tear them down, or walk away. They made a big deal how the guy had a spur to his bank. Some banker there suddenly had $3 million. He died with $12 million. And they said, well, why did he have a spur to the back of his bank? I don't know. Well, it's so he could hide the gold. Anyway.
Where's his private car?
You know,
Yeah,
you watch. I mean,
we would come up with more plausible stuff,
oh yeah,
and they'd sit there and look at us like, "You got to play the game."
so
Right.
I mean, it's done in the same
We
vein.
got to
So
do this over 12 episodes.
that's right. We got to stretch this out as much as possible.
Right.
So.
We got to recap. I love like the Oak Island. It's like we got to recap everything that's gone on for the last episodes for most of the show.
Oh, for time immemorial, anyway. You know, did you see that meme? There's a guy sitting, a skeleton watching TV. Episode 25 of Curse of Oak Island. We might find it this time. So that's the one I wanted to, I mean, I just sat there and I just, I don't know. There's nothing you could say about it. I mean, you just listen to it and you wonder, what does this guy, the historian on the crew, actually do? Besides take up space.
Not a historian, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure, yeah. So anyway, the other story I have is I look up stuff on HSTB to get dates, when short lines start, when they quit, who owns them, that kind of stuff. Came across one called the Omaha and Northwestern. Unfortunately, I don't have it terribly organized. This is the STB filings. But I'll just go ahead and read some of it. And it was the Fremont, West Point, and Pacific Railroad. Prior to that, it was ran from Fremont, Nebraska to Norfolk, Nebraska. The part Fremont to West Point was sold to the Fremont and Elkhorn Valley, and the rest was dismantled. Okay, and some of it's a trail. But the part they ran from Hooper to West Point wasn't supposed to be abandoned. They owed money on the tax, and the guy came in with a tax with the sheriff and got approval to go ahead and start turning it up before anybody could stop him. It's a really convoluted story. I was trying to figure out how to put this together and realized it would take me 3 weeks to organize all this, what's going on with this. It's 17-mile Heritage Railroad headquartered in Dodge County, Nebraska, and offered excursion services. The Fremont and Elkhorn Valley extended from Fremont to nearby Hooper. In 2010, after foreclosure was threatened on a bank loan, the Nebraska Railroad Museum sold the rail line to a private party out of Richmond, Missouri. The deal that also included the museum's locomotives. Museum planned to continue operate its dinner train, renamed the Fremont Northern, through a lease agreement. The Eastern Nebraska chapter of the National Railway Historical Society, now known as the Nebraska Railroad Museum, was chartered in 1983. Fremont Northwestern Railroad, a privately owned entity, also rented the tracks and ran trains. Now you can see why the story gets convoluted very quickly.
Steam locomotive, 1702.
I don't know. I didn't get a chance to look at that stuff. And it says, to dates, no repairs have been made. On May 2021, the process of removing the tracks was started, effectively eliminating any chance for return of railroad service. Nebraska Trails Foundation acquired the land for the railroad between Fremont and Hooper with plans to create a rail trail, of course. The Nebraska Railroad Museum currently is back in Fremont. The museum had planned to move to Nebraska City because the Burlington Northern Santa Fe gave them a locomotive, a station, and 8 acres and 2,000 feet of track was donated to them. So they were going to, says here, the museum had inventoried its remaining collection. It had sold off the DD-40 to a private guy. Oh yeah, this gets better. The museum had planned to move the equipment to the new location and open in 2022. However, ownership of the rail car, right-of-way, and lines are in dispute, and legal fees have contributed to the sale of the items from the museum's collection. The Nebraska Railroad Museum is preparing to transition. Obviously, they never moved there. It says here, Nebraska City, this is out one of their newspapers, supporters of the movement to establish a railroad museum in Nebraska City were elated in 2020 when the Burlington Northern Santa Fe deeded over property to them and have since been entangled in court filings and mystified by the reaction of the city government. This is where it gets good. About 4 months after the Nebraska Railroad Museum received the land, Nebraska City Mayor Brian Biquetet proposed an ordinance to make it punishable offense to keep non-operating railroad cars in the city limit. Step 1. The Nebraska Railroad Museum recognized that the Nebraska City Area EDC owns the historic building, but says that the land it sits on belongs to them. They asked a judge to clarify the EDC's ability to sublease the depot, and the city subsequently filed a lawsuit claiming that the 1855 maps that laid out the city reserved the city streets right away. The museum says that the city has never used the right-of-way in its history and should not be forced to remove the track. Museum proponent David Flatchman says it took 5 years and miles of red tape to get the donation of the land, and the city's response has been discouraging. Fleshman says it's actually depressing because, we want to help Nebraska City. We said that numerous times. We don't want to hurt the city. We're asking for an opportunity to sit down and we can figure this all out. So far, the city has not accepted the invitation. Well, no surprise there. Flashman says, they say, nope, not unless you sign a quick claim deed, and a quick claim deed covers everything, including Burlington gave us. Museum proponent Joan Dawson, who retired as a downtown retailer, is among those circulating the petition, hoping to encourage the city government to change its mind. So anyway, it goes on and talks about the going back and forth. They said the museum's a good fit. Here's where some of the more stuff, and here's another story. It says the Nebraska Railroad Museum has sold former Union Pacific Centennial 6925 and most of its other equipment in a collection as it battles local officials in Nebraska City over the use of tracks and property donated to the museum by the BNSF. The lone survivor of the sell-off is Union Pacific Business Car 125. Actually, I looked it up. They got a switcher and about 4 or 5 freight cars left. The problem began right after we tried to talk to them about the lease, said the spokesman Ken Bean. They didn't even want to talk to us. Their response was to pass a nuisance ordinance prohibiting anyone but the BNSF or Union Pacific from keeping non-functional railroad equipment within the city limits. Functional equipment is also considered a nuisance under the ordinance if it doesn't leave the city once every 30 days with a $500 a day fine for violations. Bean said, through an attorney with the railroad experience, opined that the ordinance probably exceeds the city's authority to regulate railroad activity. Bean said that the cost of pursuing such action is not currently within reach. If that weren't enough, the city has launched a legal challenge to the museum's ownership of land and track, alleging flaws in the deed from the BNSF and claiming that the land under the tracks was donated as a public street right-of-way on the city's original 1855 plat, and that the ownership should revert back to the city. The plans was to operate a push-pull excursion down the track and back using the business car. But Nebraska City is going to court claiming ownership of several crossings along the line, and if the judge if the judge resides with the city, they would be crossing city land without permission and potentially could be cited. We're not looking for a railroad junkyard. We're looking for the long haul being here, making an economic difference to the area and telling the story, said Bean, who represents the museum. The city wants more answers. That's where it stands as of now. And Nebraska City, one big NIMBY. And notice how they use the ordinances? I say, well, you got to move the car. It can't be standing still. It's got to leave the city every 30 days.
They made the ordinances.
And it can't go across a crossing to leave the city because we'll fine you.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that's...
Well, gee, do you think it's obvious they don't want the Railroad Museum?
Yeah, well, that's why the museum's back in Fremont temporarily.
Yeah, right now, actually, the governor should step in and go, I mean, that's ridiculous.
So
You've got the businesses in downtown saying, we want a museum here. This museum would be good for city.
So they don't want to end up with a junkyard, and I can sympathize with
Now
them on that.
That I can,
Because
agree.
volunteer organizations are notable, especially rail preservation groups, for having a bit off more than they can chew. Taking in all this equipment, we got to save it, we got to save it. I mean, look at IRM. I call IRM the largest railroad junkyard in Illinois.
that's what Wichita, the museum up on the Wichita Union Station, they're selling off some of the stuff because they realize they can't collect everything.
Right, it's well-meaning. I mean, I worked for a small neighborhood historical society, and they take in anything that people would bring in, and I'd say, look, you got to be selective about this stuff. If it isn't related to the neighborhood, you shouldn't be collecting it. Focus your collection. That's the only way.
The Hoosier Valley Museum. It's nice that they got some of the pieces they got, but they got pieces that
They're disintegrating.
they've got like 3 or 4 old coal cars, and the wood's rotted. You got enough there, you can actually rebuild 2 of them.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody's looking at it like that. Because my buddy Fred, he's the one that's got Bach number 1 out there. And he signed a deal with them, and they almost blew it. He's ready to take the locomotive back from him. He says, a couple of people on the board were fighting back and forth. Well, we don't need this here. You don't give you money, and this guy his engine gets a little workout, and people can learn things. And it'll be, what works with this little one will help you when you do the big one.
Or anything that involves boards and committees.
Oh,
Yeah.
I belonged to the IRM for 2 years, and I just refused to renew my membership.
That's what I found out about the 5-foot gauge. It was in here.
Yeah, 5 foot.
So anyway, that's the 2 stories I had.
Yeah, that's good. I think it's going to be time for us to...
Yeah, I think we've been wasting the audience's time.
Yeah, we
long
wasted
enough.
the audience's time enough.
Thank you to our 2 listeners out there.
Yes.
So anyway, that's Curse of the Civil War Gold, Railroad Edition. It's Season 1, Episode 2.
Okay, I will... Don't know why, I'm going to look it up. Come on, give me it. Where at? Ah, here it is. As our express comes into the terminal, we want to thank you for joining us. on our journey through the wonderful world of trains. The Chicago Junction is a production of the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and can be listened to on the web at www.windycityhometown.com, where you can listen to tonight's broadcast of all our past episodes. You can also sample some of the other fine programs that are being offered. Till next month, when we journey to Chicago Junction, I'm your announcer, Brian Ballou, saying happy rails to you.
You have been listening to Chicago Junction on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Wednesday, March the 8th, the year 2023. Chicago Junction was produced and directed by John DeVita, and our special thanks to the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Chicondo. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Wednesday, March the 8th, the year 2023. Until next time, be safe and thanks for listening.